The man extended his hand towards the luminous blue sphere, pondering his surroundings. The space enveloping him was filled with a vibrant blue hue, pulsating with energy and magic. Screens and pixels dotted the area, while the ground materialized beneath his feet. Suddenly, a flood of memories rushed back to him as he realized he had just awoken. Images of his past flashed before his eyes, reminding him of his former strength and the plane he had left behind. A blinding light and a deafening shockwave followed, leaving him stunned by the news of his own demise. Sitting in a lotus position on the ground, he struggled to comprehend how Lanren had met his end. Despite his efforts, he couldn't shake the thought that his own people had been responsible for his death. His eyes narrowed as he tried to piece together the events leading up to his recent demise, recalling a moment when a girl had warned him of a looming threat and expressed a desire for cooperation. Her cautionary words echoed in his mind as he realized he was the target. With a wry smile, he dismissed her concerns, only to now find himself isolated from his allies. Giroux was aware of the upcoming meeting. Subsequently, the man instructed his assistant to make all the necessary arrangements for the evening's celebration. He then inquired about a familiar name. Wasn't she the one who believed that a gun couldn't harm him? This led to laughter as he mentioned that he trusted his friend's words. Consequently, she refrained from taking any action. However, he appeared tense as he retrieved his cell phone and expressed his agreement. Despite this, there was still some confusion. She should have arrived by now, but she was nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, a message notification appeared on his phone, prompting him to send her a message. The message content remained unchanged. "My darling, I have a gift for you. It will arrive soon." Subsequently, an outline of a plane became visible through the curtain, illuminated by the lantern's light, creating a path towards the gift. Perplexed by this, he turned his head back, exclaiming as he rose from his seat. The plane's nose pierced through the glass, causing panic as they spared no expense in attempting to eliminate him. In a fit of rage, Hal Lanren leaped from his seat, cursing and urging them to flee immediately. However, the hero calmly stated that the plane was already upon them, leaving no time for escape. Despite this, he remained determined to fight back. The man clenched his fist, standing firm as a bright yellow illusion of a Chinese dragon materialized behind him. With a shout, he struck the plane's nose with a broad smile, resulting in a powerful impact and a dazzling flash. It was the path of the warrior, embodying the descending dragon. At this moment, he found himself chuckling uncomfortably. His attempt to overpower the plane with his bare hands had been futile. In an attempt to draw parallels, he contemplated folding his hands in front of his face in a continuous lock. However, he knew that this girl would never dare to harm him in such a way. Someone had decided to take advantage of him whenever the opportunity arose. He found this situation both peculiar and flawed. He felt as though he had been shattered into tiny fragments. Suddenly, the man's surprise was evident as he looked up and saw a massive blue screen materialize right in front of his face. If he had noticed, he would have seen his name written there. He proceeded to read the information about himself. He discovered that he was Hao Lanren, the leader of the Lanren gang. He had died on May 25, 2020, and now he had been chosen by the system as the savior of the end times. As a privilege, he had been granted the opportunity to be reborn and travel to the end of time. Upon completing certain tasks, he could earn the chance to be reborn in the original world. However, if he refused this offer, he would explode on the spot. Subsequently, a sentence appeared, presenting him with an invitation. The question was whether he would accept this offer or not. Upon reviewing the information, Lanren pondered deeply. Until the end of time, he must fulfill the mission. However, a sudden realization struck him, reminiscent of a children's fairy tale. Not only that, but refusal would result in the destruction of his world, along with himself. Feeling as though he had no other choice, he furrowed his eyebrows in contemplation. If given the opportunity to be reborn, he would undoubtedly accept without hesitation. With a resolute decision, he declared his acceptance of everything. Pressing the yes button on the system, a brilliant blue light emanated in various directions. Subsequently, the system goddess appeared before him, exuding beauty and grace. Welcoming him with a radiant smile in the system space, she proclaimed him as her master. Hearts formed in his eyes as he realized the goddess was actually a girl. Continuing to converse with a hint of a smile, she prepared to transport him to the apocalypse world, providing a brief explanation of the situation beforehand. In the year 2030, a peculiar orange drink in jars had become ubiquitous worldwide. Obligatory for consumption, unbeknownst to all, this drink harbored dire consequences. A member of the crowd vomited, then collapsed as his body convulsed. His eyes rolled back, blood vessels bulging as he transformed into a zombie. The horrifying transformation was a stark reminder of the drink's perilous composition. Humans metamorphosed into zombies, craving flesh and blood, subsequently turning on their own kind. Those wounded or bitten by zombies succumbed to the infection, perpetuating the cycle. The collapse of social order ensued swiftly, leading to the world's demise. The reason for his existence in this world was to save the people and help them rebuild. However, he must remember that there is no chance of rebirth here. He must strive to survive, except for one individual who seemed uncertain about his abilities due to his weakness. He doubted his capability to save the world from its impending doom. Despite this, he was sent there empty-handed, chuckling at the thought of the system's ability to revive people. It was worth investigating further. The girl, shocked and confused, could only watch as he leaped onto a plane with his bare hands. If he truly was the chosen one, then it was worth lending a helping hand. The goddess interrupted with an irritated smile, mentioning that there were 98 others before him who had failed. The 99th would surely receive her assistance. His eyes widened in surprise at the revelation of the previous failures. A sinister grin crossed her face as she chuckled to herself, a chilling sight. She demanded that he kneel and ask for help, but he calmly stated that this was the entire army and the system was flawed, leading many to their demise. Enraged, the goddess rose from her seat and warned him that this land was unforgiving. She offered him various abilities to increase his chances of survival, but he could only choose one. Once the man makes his choice, there will be no further opportunities for change. Therefore, he should carefully consider his decision. He inquired once again to confirm if there was truly only one option before contacting a new acquaintance. This acquaintance was a miser and quite peculiar. Subsequently, she presented him with numerous screens, revealing that all of his abilities were contained within them. To his surprise, his eyes were open to the same magical eye technique at level 0. It is possible for this technique to improve as he acquires new effects. One of the current effects is X-rays, which brings great delight. He immediately exclaimed in excitement upon discovering this ability within himself. Without hesitation, he selected the skill. Soon, a nearly transparent bright yellow beam, tinged with orange, began to move towards him. His eyes were fixated on its direction. Gradually, his pupil transformed into a dark, slender icon, while his iris turned yellow. In an instant, it became his own, heading towards the girl who was shielding him. He could only gaze at it in astonishment, while her figure was faintly visible beneath her clothing. The hero's nose began to bleed once again, much to his surprise. He was taken aback when he realized that his attire had transformed into pink lace. However, the goddess seemed to notice his gaze and immediately covered herself with her hands, exclaiming in embarrassment that he was a pervert. She warned him not to use his magic eyes on her again, and then threw a blue rectangle at him as if to reprimand him. The poor girl cowered and hastily covered herself with her dress, biting the fabric. Tears welled up in her eyes as she pondered why she had chosen this wretched man as her savior. Nevertheless, she must endure for the sake of saving the world. Finally, she managed to escape from the awkwardness and other matters. She explained that the magic eye is a special technique. The system goddess informed him that the magic eye technique is also known as the Hitomi technique. This technique includes a functional system called Hitomi Kui. In the days of doom, treasures, gold and silver have lost their original value entirely. However, in the hands of the hero, they can play a significant role. As a result, the upgrade system can be utilized to enhance oneself by requiring gold nitrogen. It can even unlock the door to allow him to return to the original world. Currently, his Hitomi skill level is 0. and his ability is perspective. Apart from skills, the system will also provide the hero with a beginner gift package. It contained enough canned fruit and a bag to survive for just 20 days. He could manifest it through his thoughts. Therefore, he needed to make good use of it. The goddess wished him good luck and mentioned that there would be surprises in defeating zombies. Suddenly, a white light appeared, and the hero's body was teleported to an unfamiliar room. It felt like a bathroom. Surprised, he looked at himself and wondered about his surroundings. Curious about some noises, he turned around and opened his eyes. To his amazement, behind the curtain stood the silhouette of a naked girl. Lanren's nose immediately started bleeding for a moment as he realized what a quick reward it was. He then smirked and crossed his arms over his chest, completely denying everything. When did he become such a pervert? It's just that this is the apocalypse. Zombies are everywhere, so I can't afford to be careless. Don't get too excited because it's worth trying to see through it with an X-ray. What's really going on behind the scenes? The hero's eyes immediately widened as a girl with a shuriken appeared. Her iris turned yellow, and there was indeed a naked girl covering herself with her hands. The hero's face turned red with embarrassment, and even more so when blood started to trickle from his nose. However, he had to quickly compose himself and wonder if she was human. This was his first time entering this world, so he had to be cautious. Suddenly, a big smile appeared on his face, and words of encouragement slipped out of his mouth, suggesting that she might be a zombie that looks like this. As he stood there, contemplating all of this and wondering who was behind the scenes, a woman's hand swiftly threw several weapons forward. A sharp blade sliced through the curtains and aimed directly at the man's throat. It was a surprising turn of events. He was still in shock from what had just happened when he managed to slightly dodge the sharp weapon. The woman started leaping around the room like a skilled guard hitting any surface, whether it be the floor or the ceiling. She then returned to the owner, who promptly retrieved the weapon. A towel peeked out from behind the screen, and the man himself emerged, holding a knife in his hand. The weapon was still pointed towards the uninvited guests. The woman simply stared at him, mouth agape, shocked by his misunderstanding of the situation. The technique was almost changed, and suddenly the blonde leaped out of the tub with an unkind expression on her face. She rushed towards Lauren, aiming her knife at him. Lauren could only bend slightly backwards for a few seconds as she managed to land a few punches. Despite her attempts from above and the side, he calmly avoided each one. Eventually, he grabbed her wrist as she fell with the knife, causing her to trip and fall. He hung up with a satisfied grin, and her red eyes opened in surprise. The girl blushed and shouted, asking where this pervert came from. He reassured her that he didn't mean any harm, finding only the towel sexy. She was surprised and embarrassed when she saw the dirty fabric. She continued to accuse him of being a pervert and threatened to finish him. The hero stopped her from attacking by grabbing her wrist, looking into her eyes. Despite her anger, she swung her leg at him, but he managed to block it and give her a punch. He grinned, showing his shoulders, as her foot was now next to his face. He embraced her legs with his hands and maintained eye contact. He asked if she truly wanted to kill him or just hug, to which she nervously grinned. It was evident she was uncomfortable with the closeness. As she pondered on how to proceed, an unexpected event occurred. Ever since the start of the zombie apocalypse, she had managed to survive due to her resilience. The sudden appearance of another individual left her wondering about their origins. His impressive strength did not go unnoticed by the girl, who, despite her captured state, furrowed her brows in contemplation. Admitting her inability to handle the situation, she refused to surrender. Preferring to face death together, she decided to summon a horde of zombies to challenge him. The man's expression darkened at the thought of the impending threat. Despite her efforts to distract him with the undead, he remained unfazed. Bound and bleeding, the blonde glared at him disapprovingly, her body trembling with anger. Unable to move her limbs, she plotted her revenge, determined to have the last word. The man's sudden realization of her intentions was evident in his shocked expression. The stranger rushed towards him, opening her mouth wide to reveal sharp teeth, clearly intent on carrying out her plans. She attempted to bite him, clashing her jaws together and continuing to threaten him. However, he failed to act as a hero, standing frozen with a tense expression on his face, bewildered by the situation. The girl fell to the ground, groaning about her lack of strength, while he looked on in surprise, unable to comprehend what had just occurred. As she struggled to rise, tears welled up in her eyes as she admitted her prolonged hunger, which had weakened her. She acknowledged that her diminished power was due to her prolonged hunger, otherwise she would have easily defeated him. His expression turned even more astonished as he gazed at the girl, devoid of any guilt. Eventually, he composed himself, crossing his arms against his chest, stating that he, Hao Lanren, never entices women with strength, as they usually gravitate towards it themselves. The girl frowned, shielding herself with her hands, breathing heavily in frustration, asserting that no one in this world could be trusted, especially not a pervert like him. However, a wide grin and a mischievous smile spread across the hero's face as he reached into his pocket, producing a jar of canned meat that materialized from magical pixels. He handed it to the girl, who was astonished and grateful for the unexpected food. Upon seeing the canned food, he inquired if she was hungry, offering to share it with her. Suddenly, a surreal scene unfolded before him, with Lanren transforming into the likeness of a deity, surrounded by flying doves and shimmering cans spinning with brilliance. The blonde woman pointed her finger at him and declared that canned food was a highly prized commodity in their world. She expressed doubt in his kindness and urged him to speak his mind. Irritated, the hero engaged in conversation with the girl, questioning her assumption that he had ulterior motives. However, his demeanor changed as he gazed at the array of canned dishes, his eyes lighting up with desire. He praised the canned dinner as the most valuable meal of the day, best enjoyed when cooked over a fire. The dish, made from premium ingredients using a simple cooking method, featured succulent pork belly that was boiled, caramelized, fried, and refried before being canned into a delicious meal. The girl's appetite was piqued by the enticing aroma of the canned food, and she grew increasingly hungry as the hero described its delectable qualities. Overcome by hunger, she reached out and seized the canned food from someone else, causing a commotion. Despite the initial chaos, she proceeded to savor the food, demonstrating its deliciousness by taking a spoonful. The hero, meanwhile, watched nervously as she devoured the meal with gusto. As the jar emptied within minutes, he was left in shock at how quickly the food had disappeared. Ye Xiaoli, with crumbs on her face, clasped her hands together in a prayer-like gesture. Tears welled up in her eyes as she wondered if there was any more canned food left. To her surprise, the man smiled and produced another can of food. Doubts lingered in her mind about whether her name was truly Ye Xiaoli. However, he insisted that there was food available, but she would have to answer some of his questions before he would give it to her. Despite her hunger, the girl emphasized that she trusted him and believed he wouldn't harm her if she ate the canned food. Meanwhile, Lanren felt increasingly irritated as he struggled to suppress his emotions due to her frustrating responses. After some time, they found themselves sitting together in a room. The girl sat on a chair, chewing on something, while the hero examined a map from the comfort of a sofa. Through their conversation, he discovered that they were in a city called Quanzhou in southern China, 3 years after the outbreak of a zombie virus. Most survivors had sought refuge in a secure base located in central China. However, many were unable to leave due to the large number of zombies congregating at the city's only exit in the north. Xiao Li also provided him with a map of Quanzhou, making their next steps much easier to navigate. After a few more minutes, he rose from his seat, taking the map and expressing his gratitude for the exchange. It was now his turn to divert the blonde's attention. The girl glanced at him as he stepped onto the window ledge with his shoes on, seemingly forgetting to mention something. Suddenly, he turned towards her with a wide smile and exclaimed how amazing her body was, before leaping out of the window. Blushing, she shouted back, labeling him as a pervert. She proceeded to the window and witnessed the swift descent of the hero. While grumbling discontentedly and muttering to himself about it, this man suddenly materialized in the bathroom beside her. He also had valuable possessions and canned goods with him. The blonde seized the dagger that was stored in the box and proudly positioned herself inside the window, clutching the shutters. Reluctantly, she decided to accompany him, as she might be able to acquire more. After some time, she observed the man walking from behind, pondering intensely. He paid great attention to his surroundings, turning his head and assuring himself that it didn't matter at all. He firmly believed that she was not a bad person. Let her be. The system's goddess herself had proclaimed that he would receive numerous rewards and bonuses for eliminating the undead. At least, that's what had happened before. The hero contemplated his next move, refraining from speaking aloud, unaware of the item she had mentioned. However, he knew he had to eliminate some zombies to find out. Soon, his footsteps faded away. Suddenly, his shoe collided with a jar, causing a loud commotion. The man's eyes fluttered open, surprised by the chaos that had engulfed the city. A terrifying noise erupted, prompting one of the zombies to react, pricking its ears and emerging from various concealed locations. Its eyes glowed red, steam emanated from its mouth, and its brow furrowed as it prepared to attack the hero. As he continued walking, he couldn't help but feel that something was amiss. Where were all the undead who were supposed to assail him? Did he truly not emit any scent? In that very moment, a window pane shattered before him, and the same zombies emerged from within. The creature opened its gaping mouth, targeting the living being, until a broad smile appeared on its face. The man's smile widened as he took a step back, narrowly avoiding the zombie's attack. Jumping forward, he crashed through the glass even harder. The zombies were closing in, several meters away. He quickly assumed a fighting stance, realizing their sensitivity to sound. As the zombie lunged at him, he growled and retaliated, dodging its claws. With a swift movement, he drew a sword from a collection of blue light, pointing it at the enemy. Lanren's expression turned serious as he advanced, swiftly dismembering the zombie with precise strikes. Dark blood splattered as the battle unfolded. He smiled once more and looked back with a chuckle. Suddenly, chaos erupted. "Come and get him!" But then, his eyes widened in shock as he realized his limbs were missing. The zombies began to spread, turning red before connecting to form a new network. This was regeneration in action. He stared in disbelief, mouth agape and a look of horror on his face. Without hesitation, he sprinted away. In the background, the zombies growled loudly, hot on his heels. Lanren cried out in frustration at the unfairness of it all. It seemed inevitable that he would meet his end soon. The man pursuing him swiped his claws, attempting to strike once more. A bystander yelled out in warning. Just in time, the hero spun around and swiftly severed both of his limbs with a precise strike. However, they quickly grew back. The zombie grinned in satisfaction, waving mockingly. Lanren repeated the process, making a few more attempts. Each time he cut off the hand with a single stroke, only to watch it regenerate. The zombie's grin faded, replaced by a look of annoyance. The battle continued, with the man relentlessly severing limbs while the zombie attempted to strike back. Despite their efforts, neither could gain the upper hand. Eventually, they both conceded defeat. Breathing heavily, Lanren noticed the mountain behind them, but it continued to glow red and grow. He suspected the zombies could regenerate, posing a problem that needed to be addressed. Changing tactics seemed like a wise decision. Lanren assumed a fighting stance, a wide grin on his face. A bright flame ignited behind him, growing larger by the second. With a fierce blow, he raised his fists, now engulfed in bright yellow flames. The zombie, startled, lost its grin and covered its face in defense. Lanren delivered a precise punch, causing a blinding flash. As he shouted his intention to defeat the zombie, Lanren's attack landed squarely on its face, causing it to recoil and bleed profusely. The zombie's head split into pieces, its lifeless body collapsing in front of Lanren. Remembering his gaming experience, he knew that zombies had to be killed with headshots. As the zombie exploded into a pile of gold coins, Lanren's eyes widened in shock. In surprise, he widened his mouth. Suddenly, the pupil transformed into a dollar symbol. With an exclamation, he snatched the coin. It was absolutely golden. Despite a mountain of gold lying before him, only one coin fell into his hand. He grinned smugly, examining it closely. To his surprise, the goddess of the system began speaking. However, The money quickly dissolved into pixels and vanished into thin air. A white flash engulfed everything, and he found himself in the same space he appeared in after death. The goddess immediately greeted him and congratulated her master, providing him with information. It was his first time killing a zombie. Meanwhile, the man could only see his hands. Where did the gold go? Suddenly, a window appeared, identifying itself as a notification system. It informed him that he had received 1,000,000 coins. The girl explained with a smile that killing one zombie earned him 1,000,000 coins. With this balance, he could also start acquiring nitrogen gold. Once again, the hero's eyes sparkled. He realized he was right. He needed to aim for the head. After all, there were so many coins for killing just one zombie. He would become rich. The entire system scheme reappeared above the goddess. Ever since he obtained the first gold coin, the Hitomi technique skill upgrade tree had been activated. However, upgrading the Hitomi technique required 10 million nitrogen gold, and our hero didn't have enough money. Lanren was shocked and protested that 10 million was too much. The system goddess explained once again that the host's golden Hitomi technique had potential, and the capabilities of the next level were currently kept secret. If he wanted to know, he would have to work hard to earn money. Additionally, the host also needed to activate the Hitomi Gate function. This function allowed the host to return to the original world, instantly appearing behind him in the form of two large. He stood over it and opened a door, revealing a portal with a view of the city illuminated. The man's eyes gleamed once more. He let out a loud scream. Everything was fine because he had been waiting for this moment. "Let it be," he finally uttered, stating that only 100 million gold coins were required for this. He continued to smile, covering his mouth with his hand, mentioning that each transition would be free of charge. This left the man devoid of any emotion, possibly in a state of shock. However, the girl quickly rushed to reassure him, asking him not to be upset and to complete her task. Before that, she instructed him one last time. Objects could be stored in the living space, but creatures could not access the gold they obtained from dying. Only visible to him, others would see only lifeless bodies. The gold was untouchable and automatically recharged the system account when the host entered space, causing time in the world to stop. This was nothing to worry about. The only options were to be discovered or to be harmed. He waved his hand at him once more, a cheerful smile indicating that the owner should heed this warning. "Let it be," he said. He reminded him to call at any time. With a wish of good luck, his body began to dissolve into space with the assistance of pixels. Lanren was left in awe, clutching his forehead in disbelief. It wasn't just luck that crossed his mind. How much wealth must one amass to unlock the gates of this cursed world? The apocalypse unfolded before him once more. Drawing upon his strength and mana, he let out a resounding scream. His heart urged him on, as if money and gold were beckoning him. Making money and battling zombies were now his primary concerns. At the pinnacle, a girl observed him intently. Her eyes widened in astonishment as she gazed at the man before her. The blonde possessed a chilling power, dispatching zombies with a single blow. He was a stranger to this realm, a powerful figure in a place devoid of significance and resources. Moreover, he possessed a wealth of valuable food. The blonde pondered Lanren's origins and true identity. Ye Xiaoli mulled over the situation once more. The girl envisioned Lanren as a savior, a titan of canned goods. Her mouth watered at the thought. Upon glancing at the ground, she noticed a decapitated zombie with blood splattered all around, finding it oddly intriguing. She stood up and began contemplating her next move. Swiftly, she leaped down, causing her skirt to lift up and reveal her white panties. Examining the fabric, she pondered about the mysterious individual. Determined to uncover his identity, the blonde snatched the cloth abruptly. As the sun rose over the city, Lanren found himself in a corner, holding a zombie close to his head. The other three lay lifeless, their skulls drenched in blood. Letting out a frustrated sigh, he squeezed his opponent's head until it disintegrated into yellow particles. A system window popped up, displaying a balance of only 5 million. Despite his efforts, he had only managed to eliminate a few, far from his goal of 100 million. He knew he had to continue searching for more zombies. Suddenly, Lanrin stumbled upon a pink handkerchief, its scent hitting his nose sharply, causing him to grimace. As he approached the scent, he gradually walked towards it, eventually discovering a piece of fabric from which the smell emanated. Taking it into his hand, he covered his nostrils with his fingers and frowned, exclaiming that the stench was making him feel faint. However, he noticed some text on the fabric that read, "Help! I'm hiding near an amusement park. There are a lot of zombies here. I beg you to save me. I'll do it, thank you." With widened eyes, he exclaimed aloud, realizing that where there were zombies, there was potential for treasure. Confidently, he claimed that he would find out where most of the creatures were. After entering the amusement park, he walked along its paths, eventually coming across a tent with a sign that said SOS in capital letters. To his surprise, he noticed a girl with black hair peeking out from behind the closed door, holding a flag with the same letters. She referred to herself as his big sister and pleaded for him to save her. Suddenly, a shadow appeared, accompanied by a menacing growl. Multiple figures emerged, causing the girl to become even more frightened and burst into tears. Standing before them was a tall zombie clown and a person dressed as Mickey Mouse, both wearing sinister grins. The clown's red eyes bore into the girl as she trembled in fear, choking on her tears. From behind, the clowns lunged towards Lanrin, intending to attack him. His outstretched hand aimed to capture him, but the hero swiftly retaliated by hurling stones imbued with fiery power from his hands. The girl, taken aback, witnessed blood splattering across her as she realized that the zombie had shattered one of its limbs. Despite this, the creature foolishly stood its ground, its red eyes blinking in confusion. Undeterred, the hero continued to pelt the zombie with rocks until the man clenched his fist, nearly shattering the projectile. With a sinister grin, he proclaimed that they had all become zombies, taunting the pathetic being he had defeated. Even in death, he exuded a self-assured confidence, his fists still clenched as he menacingly stared at the hero with his red eyes. Suddenly, several more zombies emerged, their attention now fixated on him. In a Mickey Mouse costume, the man charged forward like a speeding car, growling loudly as he ascended the stairs. Unfazed, he maintained his grin and flicked his finger, propelling a rock forward with such force that it sliced through the air, emitting a bright yellow light. The projectile effortlessly pierced the dead man's head. Meanwhile, the hero propelled himself higher into the air, effortlessly leaping over the approaching zombies, a knife materializing in his hand as he aimed directly for the clown, who was also sprinting towards him. The clown's eyes widened in surprise, his mouth agape as he let out a thunderous growl. In a swift motion, the hero swiftly severed the clown's head with his knife, the blade emitting a blue light as it sliced through the air. The system window displayed an increase of 1 million in his balance. Suddenly, a girl in a maid costume charged at him with glowing red eyes, ready to attack. Following closely behind was another zombie in a suit, chasing him relentlessly. Just as he thought it couldn't get any worse, a blonde prepared to deliver a final blow. Reacting swiftly, the man turned around and hurled a sharp knife at the zombie with a determined expression. The blonde watched in surprise as the weapon passed through her without causing any harm, as it was intended for the zombies. The zombie behind her lost its head and hat due to the sharp blade. In the midst of the chaos, the man attempted to ensnare the blonde or even threw a stone at her feet, causing her to stumble and fall face first to the ground. As she looked up in shock and confusion, he pinned her down and raised his sword above her, ready to strike. With precision, he aimed the sword at the zombie, eliciting a growl and a maniacal smile. Suddenly, a cacophony of ringing filled the air as coins spilled from the corpses that had appeared and exploded. Rising from his seat, the man declared that it was over, despite the limitations. Gold gleamed in his hand, almost as if it had fallen from the heavens. The girl observed the scene before her, pondering whether the man possessed the ability to single-handedly eliminate a few zombies. This man, however, suddenly fell silent, as his attention was captured by the sight of her savior emerging from hiding. The woman intentionally adjusted her t-shirt to accentuate her ample bosom, bridging the gap between them. With a hint of embarrassment, she pressed her finger to her lips and blushed, beckoning him towards her. She addressed him, remarking on how her little brother could be so mighty, expressing her fondness for his strength. However, a mere 10 seconds of silence ensued, with no response or reaction from Lanrin. This left her slightly irritated, as her heart yearned for his attention. Despite this, 20 seconds passed, causing her heart to race and her patience to wane. Lanrin remained unresponsive, which was quite peculiar considering the bizarre sight before him. A man holding a zombie Mickey Mouse and beginning to undress below his pants. In surprise, he opened his eyes and gazed at her, wondering what he had forgotten in his pants. A vivid image flashed in her mind, depicting her actually squeezing a rooster's neck. Frustrated, she resorted to unsatisfyingly groping at the man's clothing, realizing that the only way to obtain what she desired was to search for hidden treasures. She pondered why the other zombies seemed to be showered with gold, while Lanrin's pockets remained empty. Determined, she began to forcefully drag the corpse, growing increasingly angry and persistently urging him to reveal everything he had concealed. Since the hero earned this money through hard work and determination, the girl is now filled with fear and attempts to contact him. Observing this expression of tension in another person's smile before the pose becomes more defined. It appeared as though the man had become attached to the back of the zombie. He let out a loud scream immediately, tears streaming down his face. It seemed as though the latter was only slowing down the zombies. And indeed, the coin fell from his trousers, dissolving into pixels in the air. The sweaty man realized that they were finally safe. How can one capture a picture like that? Chu-Chu was naturally shocked and retreated behind the wall. She pondered whether she should run now in order to escape. Meanwhile, the man remained standing over the lifeless body that stood before him. Suddenly, he changed his approach. He approached her and asked what she had said. This caused her to jump in shock, her eyes wide open, unsure of how to respond. She then lowered her head completely. Unfortunately, she couldn't run away. Men were a rare sight in this place. She tightly gripped the hem of her garment, feeling even more tense. He deserved to be enticed by her. The girl boldly advanced, revealing her breasts. She awkwardly thanked him for saving her. After all, if it weren't for him, she would have perished here, right? He responded briefly with an okay, while retrieving his dagger from the head of one of the zombies. Meanwhile, she emerged from her hiding place and introduced herself as Chu-Chu. She had been searching for food and stumbled upon the zombies. She didn't know what to do and had been running for a long time. Her feet were bleeding, which is why she found herself trapped here. She continued her seduction scheme by placing her hand on his chest and expressing her desire for him to take her back. She thanked him, and Lanrin's eyes lit up at her words. He straightened up and turned to her with a smile, grateful that she was referring to the gold. The woman with dark hair blushed and grinned, finding it difficult to scold him for joking about something so rare in their world. She pressed her hand to her chest, licked her lips, and explained that the reward was not for mere consumption. She hinted at something even more intriguing, confident that he would be interested. However, the hero grew annoyed and gestured for her to save it for another time, as he had important matters to attend to. The girl urgently phoned him, insisting that he wait and not reject her proposal. She then grasped his hand firmly, asserting that he must accompany her back today. However, he turned to her with a smile and inquired what would occur if he declined. Chu-Chu was taken aback, as if struck by lightning, a reaction he couldn't replicate. Looks don't sway me. She withdrew her hand and placed it against her chest once more. When did the conversation shift in such a manner? She would take measures to ensure his compliance. Suddenly, the girl began clapping loudly, causing the individual she was addressing to widen his eyes in astonishment and immediately stiffen. He called out, "Sister, come forth!" Soon, girls emerged from all the other tents. They encircled the hero, gradually closing in on him from all directions. Eventually, the four of them, if counted, were also new acquaintances, forming a sort of ring around him. One of the girls in red approached the hero with a grin, commenting on how handsome he was. The man, still surprised, watched as she leaned in closer, gently placing her hand on his chest and blushing as she called him a real diamond. The other two girls with pink and blonde hair quickly agreed, moving in close to inspect him. They noted that his face was the only one that seemed truly alive among them all. As he grew more cruel, the girls in the circle became shocked and tense. He then declared that they were right on schedule for a very bright light, igniting a burning love for them that caused them to burst into laughter. Clearly satisfied with their reaction, he was taken aback when a brunette woman in a red dress playfully slapped his butt, causing him to tremble. She then praised him for knowing how to talk to girls. Meanwhile, Chu-Chu observed as Sister Hong-Ying forcefully slapped Lauren, prompting her to defend the man who had saved her. She tearfully asked her not to offend him, while the hero blushed and gave a thumbs up, smiling proudly. Despite her refusal, he insisted that she continue as she pleased, even encouraging her to do so. The brunette woman was slightly surprised by his response as he unconsciously tilted his head towards her, giving off a completely different impression. Why was he suddenly so delighted by the presence of so many girls? Before his eyes widened, a sudden realization dawned upon her. Chu-Chu herself exclaimed loudly, affirming her complete understanding. These words held true, as they were the genuine expressions of a man with a cigarette in hand. In this world, any woman can captivate a man with her charm. If a man resists, it is a testament to the woman's allure. Meanwhile, the hero felt a firm touch on his cheek. She divulged that both sisters were undeniably fond of him. Curiously, she inquired if he would accompany them. At that moment, a smile of confidence adorned his face. He was not only content, but also elated. The girl then pulled him close, embracing him tightly, and boldly invited him to join them. Given his flushed face, it was evident that he would not refuse, as they all expected. Chu-Chu herself immediately nestled into his arms and agreed to inform her brother that they had more than enough food and drink. She urged him to come along. Meanwhile, the hero found himself nestled between the two twin hills. He reveled in the joy it brought him, his face illuminated by a radiant smile. Pure happiness emanated from his eyes. After some time, Lanren awkwardly rubbed the back of his head. However, he continued to blush and smile, declaring that he would do anything without hesitation because he wholeheartedly agreed. As he surveyed his surroundings, he noticed the abundance of beautiful women present. He questioned why they would need someone like him. Instantly, the girls collectively called him foolish, drawing closer with gentle smiles. They found him intriguing and believed he possessed strength that they must confront. Never before had he diverted the unwavering attention of the two sisters. The girls were taken aback when they realized that the man who was standing proudly on a ledge had all their weapons in his possession. He smiled gently, tracing the items in his hands, and calmly revealed that he had uncovered their hiding spots long ago. Despite their initial shock, the girls turned towards him in disbelief, with Chu-Chu's eyes widening in surprise. They questioned him on how he managed to discover their secret, but he remained unfazed, smiling and even absent-mindedly fiddling with his ear. 10 minutes ago, Lanren found himself standing near the ominous sign on the tent. As he opened his eyes, he was taken aback by what he saw. It was clear that he was the only one present, yet a sense of unease washed over him. His attention was drawn to a girl who stood calmly with her arms crossed, despite being surrounded by zombies. Unlike the others, she exuded an air of calculated determination. Intrigued, Lanren activated his magic eye, which glowed a bright yellow, transforming into shuriken-like shapes. He noticed that the girl had a sedative hidden in her back pocket, a sedative that had no effect on zombies but seemed to have a specific target in mind. Realizing the danger of confronting her alone, Lanren deduced that she must have a partner nearby. Unbeknownst to Lanren, there were others lurking in the shadows. A couple stood behind him, while another pair flanked him on either side. A blonde woman brandishing a whip wore a sinister smile, accompanied by a pink-haired individual wielding a penknife. Meanwhile, a person played with handcuffs, each armed and ready for a confrontation. It was evident that they were setting a trap, though Lanren couldn't discern the reason behind their need for a man. Nevertheless, he understood the nature of ambushes and was prepared to retaliate using the tactics of a seasoned businessman. The hero gathered his weapons and decided to observe how they would fare without him. He watched as the men stood in front of the tent, brandishing their weapons and demanding more from the girls. With a smile, he warned them that they wouldn't have a second chance if they didn't comply. Hung Yin scowled and clenched her teeth, glaring at the man who had exposed their vulnerability. Chu-Chu removed her hoodie and tossed it aside, while her sister snapped her fingers in frustration. Despite their plans being revealed, Ying shouted confidently that they could still escape. She rallied her sisters to confront the man, who stood unfazed near the tent. He raised his arms, asking for forgiveness before swiftly disarming the blonde and causing her to stumble. As she fell, he swiftly threw a dart towards her, causing her to cry out in pain. The man remained composed, observing the chaos he had caused. In the meantime, a woman with pink hair emerged from behind, extending her leg forward with the aim of striking him from the back. With each subsequent movement of her raised legs, her skirt fluttered. Without delay, he grasped her feet and calves, twisting them tightly like a tourniquet or a constricting snake. The hero had already pivoted to confront her, as she struggled to maintain her uncomfortable stance with her legs still raised. They locked eyes, until the pink-haired woman furrowed her brow and tensely muttered something about his identity. However, she was unable to finish her sentence due to his mischievous grin. Lanrin manipulated the tourniquet and swiftly executed a move. The woman spun on her axis, causing her to lose balance immediately and let out a scream. Meanwhile, Chu-Chu and Hong exchanged grins and shouted in unison as they charged forward. Closing in on him from behind, the elder one aimed to strike his shoulder with a swift kick. Simultaneously, the younger one bent his knee, targeting a blow to his head. Their movements were relentless, with the sole purpose of overwhelming the hapless hero. Yet, it was the final strike that rebounded sharply. Consequently, their attacks failed to reach their intended target, and instead were met with resistance. As small particles scattered in the air and yellow streaks became visible, Ying found herself in handcuffs that were originally meant for her. She shouted in frustration, realizing how quickly things had escalated. Suddenly, a knife was plunged into her back, despite the man's initial order for her not to move. Surprisingly, this did not intimidate her at all. Instead, she attempted to laugh or chuckle, as if mocking his intentions and causing him to sweat nervously. However, her words were abruptly silenced when the hero struck her on the back of her head. As she regained consciousness, she bowed down, feeling the weight of the situation. Chu-Chu, witnessing all of this, began to worry, knowing that this was only a temporary state of affairs. The perspective through binoculars is focused. Whether or not he is approaching is becoming increasingly evident. He is teetering on the edge of what a man's mind cannot comprehend. Men struggled to resist the allure of beauty. Xiaoli, from somewhere above, was observing him with only a blink, taking in the scene. She collected her thoughts, never imagining that he would go unnoticed when he appeared in her bathroom. However, it seemed that the girl was mistaken. Eventually, all the fighting sisters were gathered on a wall where everyone could see them. Strangely, their hands were bound and their voices were silenced. The hero stood before them, chuckling to himself as he toyed with a rock in his hand, admiring their attractiveness. It was a peculiar occurrence that happened with every living being he encountered. It turns out that women are the first to display signs of intelligence. One of them suddenly leaped up and pressed her bound hand against him, screaming profanities. He knew exactly who they were and promptly revealed their identities. He disclosed that he belonged to the Black Lotus gang. Such an act warranted severe punishment, but the powerful threat seemed to have no effect on him. Under Lanrin's piercing gaze, he clenched the stone in his hand so tightly that it crumbled. When he inquired about the correct pronunciation of this name, he asked, prior to verbally confirming that it was indeed accurate, even resembling a group of black hearts even more. As a bright grin appeared on his face and his red eyes flashed. Now they must answer his questions, or else he will feed them to zombies. He then crouched closer to the face that looked up at him. And then he eagerly informed them that it could happen based on their attire. Understand that it is not only Chu-Chu who serves as bait. The men and girls who heard his name also looked at him, while the man continued to state that no one ran away from him, which was the reality for all men. He hadn't encountered a single one all day and fell into their trap. It seemed that this even lifted the brunette's spirits, because he smiled and cast his vote. He immediately asked if he truly didn't do it. And be aware that men have become highly valuable in this era. Naturally, these words raised a significant question in his mind. That's why the hero tilted his head. She couldn't comprehend why men were such a valuable commodity. And then Chu-Chu began her sorrowful tale. When the plague broke out, they showed the part where a man starts turning into a zombie due to a canned drink, trembling with strength and a wild mane, experiencing epileptic seizures. Meanwhile, her boyfriend called out to his beloved man and shouted what had happened to him. Under the same circumstances, the first signs of the disease appear in men. Unfortunate luck with mucus protruding all over their body, face, and yellow rolling eyes. Even the news graphs were displayed with full intensity and reported that research shows the zombie virus develops and spreads faster in men than in women. Men are urged to exercise caution, but only after several months have passed. The male population in China has been steadily declining due to their increased susceptibility to infections. This has led to a near-extinction scenario. When caught by women, men are often forced to report the presence of any hidden individuals. As a result, the surviving tribes consist of very few men and women, making resources scarce. Despite the circumstances, one woman reassured everyone with a smile, claiming that everything was fine. This prompted them to plan for future enjoyment. Men are burdened with heavy tasks and treated as slaves, draining their strength and vitality. Some women even resort to using whips, turning men into sex slaves and laborers over time. The scene gradually fades away, leaving the woman with a predatory grin as she continues to wield her whip, displaying her dominance. She uses various methods to motivate them, whether it be through work or engaging in activities with her in the bedroom. Her seductive appearance adds to the intimidation factor. The poor men are left in distress, unable to withstand the torment. Any attempts to resist are met with sharp and cruel blows from the whip, leaving them injured and helpless, with only their fists clenched in frustration. The hero continued to ponder the situation at hand. It was becoming increasingly clear that the circumstances were far more dire than he had initially anticipated. The threat of contamination, even in small quantities of food, was causing chaos among the women. Despite his own strength, surviving in this environment alone would prove to be a daunting task, let alone saving the world. Suddenly, a brilliant idea struck him. He could establish a new society in this world. With a surplus of women, he could assemble an army of beauties to aid him in his mission. His eyes then landed on a nearby car, just a few meters away. It appeared that he could even ignite candles using the headlights with his eyes. As he pondered further, he noticed movement near the car. A figure emerged, followed by the menacing visage of the undead. One of them leaped onto the Jeep's roof, while the others followed suit. Despite the onslaught of zombies, the hero remained unfazed, knowing that his skills and determination would see him through. With a dagger in hand, he swiftly dispatched 3 of the undead with a single swift motion, leaving behind a trail of bright blue streaks. As he charged forward, a sudden scream pierced the air, prompting him to investigate the source of the disturbance. The girl witnessed a peculiar sight of zombies approaching, named Hong and Chu-Chu. Their mouths exuded power, as they clearly had intentions. This caused immediate tears from those who were older. She called out to her sister, grabbed her hand, pulled her towards herself, and begged for help. Despite her efforts, the zombies continued to catch their feet, cutting their skin with claws and loudly expressing their desire to eat. The brunette stared tensely and trembling, warning that only he would be infected and should not be dragged into it. She then slapped the woman, pulled her hand away, and screamed for her to let go, while the latter cried and screamed. One Chu-Chu managed to escape, finding a way to the exit, as the other zombies rushed towards the remaining girls, tearing them apart and growling loudly. The hero assured that he would handle the situation soon, turning his attention to the girl, grinning widely, and offering his assistance. The horde of zombies stood before him, gleaming with power, as he panted and turned his sword towards them, cutting off heads and reducing them to pieces. The zombies turned into piles of gold, exploding beautifully, allowing him to collect a significant amount of money. Lanren smiled contentedly, jumping in joy as his balance increased with more money. He engaged in battle with the zombies repeatedly, each time with increasing intensity. Gradually, a sense of power and energy began to emanate from him. In the meantime, the balance had reached a staggering 12 million. Suddenly, he ascended into the air, as approximately 9 million more were added to the total. The thrill of the moment was palpable as he reveled in the influx of money. A girl observed him through her miniature binoculars, sparking curiosity. The question lingered. Why was he so elated? It wasn't flirtation that brought him joy, but the act of vanquishing zombies. The nature of these creatures intrigued him. As realization dawned on him, his eyes widened in shock. An image flashed in his mind of a man blushing in the presence of zombies, on the verge of a seemingly successful kiss. Xiaoli and herself were taken aback, yet the undead continued their relentless advance towards the hero. Lanren, however, poised his sword with a furrowed brow, signaling the end of the day's battle. The scent emanating from the bag was alluring, and he was reluctant to squander it. Despite his reservations, he steeled himself and readied his weapon. Today he fought for Slava alone, mindful that further killings would only attract more zombies. Yet an inexplicable feeling nagged at him. As he braced for an attack, a zombie lunged at him, narrowly missing its mark. The man swiftly withdrew another blade from his other hand and conjured something else in his palm. With a determined stride, he lunged towards his opponent and swiftly decapitated him. Turning to the side, he extended the girl's palm, which appeared stiff and rigid. Without hesitation, he opened his mouth wide and peered through the binoculars, revealing a jar of incredibly delicious meatballs in his palm. It was a canned delicacy. Xiaoli, who observed from above, couldn't help but lower her gaze and drool at the sight. The tantalizing aroma of the meatballs caused his little shelter to salivate uncontrollably, while he continued to express his desire for them. The taste was exquisite, and he yearned for it deeply. A wide grin spread across Hal's face as he asked both of them if they enjoyed it. He emphasized that if he were to perish, this delectable canned food would cease to exist. He had obtained it from the Ferris wheel stand. He shouted that he would be there momentarily and instructed them to wait, as if he would descend and join them soon. After some time, he finally touched the ground, grasped the motorcycle's handle, and propelled himself forward. With a swift press of the accelerator, he shot off like a bullet towards his friend, leaving behind a cloud of smoke and dust. And then he disappeared into the distance. He raced on his motorcycle, soaring through the sky with a sense of misery. Above, several zombies observed as their wheels spun and focused on the right target. The lifeless beings simply stared at him, shocked, as a colossal shadow loomed over them. The girl swiftly mounted her motorbike in front of the zombies, driving off with a sharp turn that left tire marks on the ground. She then motioned for a guy to join her, warning him to hold the can tightly or face consequences. Hal signaled for him to refuel as they sped away, leaving the zombies behind. Despite a zombie almost reaching them, the girl remained unfazed, focusing on the road ahead. The scene unfolded like a bizarre game of bowling, with the zombies as pins. As Legenia's shoes flew off, he screamed at the zombies, undeterred by the chaos. With a smile, he continued his journey, summoning more zombies along the way. Upon hearing this, he turned red and exclaimed once more, accusing his friend of being a pervert. He then muttered to himself, wondering who else was fortunate enough to spend such a delightful evening with him. In a desperate plea, he urged his friend to hold on to him tightly, as there was nothing else to grasp onto. The only thing he could rely on was the hero's prominent chest. With his mouth wide open and his face squinting against the fierce wind, he asked innocently, "But where is even stronger than his palm?" He truly wished to delve into someone else's most comprehensible watermelon. Just a few seconds later, the golden star and the lion burst forth with great force. This clearly demonstrated that Lanren accepted it. Suddenly, several handcuffs shot up above his head. Meanwhile, the girl blushed and immediately felt irritated, stating that she didn't want anything to do with him if it wasn't for the food. She didn't want to waste her energy on a guy who only muttered about it. Awkwardly, he apologized and assured her that it wouldn't happen again. However, he still let his hand linger from the watermelon to her waist as they continued driving down the deserted road. Shilin continued to grumble and express his displeasure, leaving a trail of smoke and dust behind them. Eventually, when the sun disappeared completely below the horizon, a certain amount of time had passed. Night descended upon the city. Subsequently, they made their way back to the deserted apartment in the building where they resided. Inside his modest room, the hero settled on the sofa, while the girl positioned herself on the floor, lighting a lantern that instantly brightened the space. It was only then that they had the opportunity to survey the interior, revealing a completely transformed apartment. Pondering how to make himself comfortable on the sofa, he contemplated if this could be his secondary base, one that only a new acquaintance would agree to. Furthermore, during an epidemic, affluent areas become deserted, prompting him to select this villa and make it his own, as evidenced by his motorcycle parked outside. However, the scarcity of resources in their vicinity posed a challenge. Where could he possibly obtain fuel? He paused from his tasks, turning to her and revealing that the motorcycle was a gift from her father, just before the outbreak of the epidemic. A photograph of the girl's family, standing in front of a book, flashed before them. Subsequently, he shared his intention to journey to the state center to search for his parents, but the abundance of zombies at the North Gate hindered his plans. Consequently, he needed to conserve fuel while remaining in the current location. Despite his efforts to devise an escape plan, uncertainty loomed over the fate of his parents. While examining the photograph, the hero noticed it as well. His eyebrows slightly furrowed, unsure of what to do next. Before he could react, someone handed him an apple. He chuckled and offered to share it, believing that a full stomach would provide strength and comfort. Without hesitation, he eagerly snatched the apple from the person's hand with his mouth. He agreed with their statement, causing the hero to shudder and quickly retract his hand. As he sat there with a large red apple clenched between his teeth, he let out a slightly embarrassed scream. Nevertheless, he continued to chew the fruit vigorously and expressed to his companion that it had been a long time since he last had an apple. The only time he managed to taste one was 2 years ago when he found a rotten apple in a frozen food warehouse. The man was truly disgusted by this revelation. He stared at the blonde woman in surprise, contemplating how much of a glutton she still appeared to be. However, his emotions quickly shifted to a happier state as he defiantly raised his fists. Realizing that he still needed to know the details of everything, he smiled again and exclaimed at the woman's beauty. He casually wondered why she was following him, questioning if it was true that she was in love with him. The man even stood up in a certain pose, forcefully straightening his hair, causing the woman to almost choke on her apple and blush instantly. He loudly exclaimed and discarded everything he was given. His main concern was food, as he feared not being able to eat anymore if he died. He had a large supply of canned food. However, his attention was diverted when the girl arrived. She made him more serious and questioned his true identity. How did he become so strong? Where did he acquire all that food? He sadly crossed his arms over his chest and mentioned that even though they had met twice, she still didn't know who he really was. Why was he keeping his secret? The girl passionately argued that he had mentioned her name and began narrating a story. Before the apocalypse, he was a member of the national swordsmanship team and had achieved numerous accolades. His sword skills, honed over 2 years of training, were exceptional. He modestly claimed to be just average compared to himself, as he ate an apple. Lanren muttered upon hearing the story, realizing that the girl was from the swordsmanship team, explaining her impressive skills. How weak must someone be to survive the end of the world? The man had an idea. He wanted to create his own team. Despite being a rare individual, he found the idea of forming a team of alluring and capable women more intriguing than a team of men. He decided to establish a women's team in this post-apocalyptic world. He chuckled at the thought, while the girl playfully hit his head and inquired about his true identity. Lanren had 3 prominent bumps on his head, making him cautious about revealing his true identity. Consequently, he decided to create a false persona and introduced himself as Hao Lanren, a martial arts trainer. As for the food he possessed, he discreetly kept it in his crotch. To prove its existence, he offered the girl the opportunity to verify it herself. However, his proposition was met with a swift and forceful kick to his face. Once he had regained his composure, despite a few bruises, Lanrin inquired if the girl was interested in striking a deal with him. Surprised, he opened his eyes wide and directed his gaze towards his interlocutor, seeking clarification on the nature of the contract. Placing his hand on the key beneath his chin, he expressed his need to hunt zombies and requested the girl to serve as his guide, given her familiarity with the territory. Lanrin blinked repeatedly, his mind filled with astonishment. Hunting zombies seemed like an absurd notion, didn't it? Nevertheless, he proposed that if the girl agreed to accompany him on this venture, he would personally provide all the necessary food throughout their journey. Raising his index finger, he assured her that each meal would consist of apples and canned goods. Without hesitation, the blonde girl promptly accepted his offer, causing saliva to involuntarily escape from Lanrin's mouth. Previously skeptical, he now realized that he couldn't label this person as a villain. However, he couldn't help but question why he chose to kill zombies. Nonetheless, considering the abundance of canned goods, starvation was not a concern. On one side of the scale, there lay canned food and an apple, while on the other side, there was only a single, insignificant zombie. He extended his clenched fists forward, wearing a joyful smile, and declared that they had reached an agreement on the contract. In response, Lanrin gazed at him with astonishment, slightly parting his lips before breaking into a smile and striking him with his fist. As he exclaimed that they had indeed come to an agreement, they proceeded to celebrate their victory. Afterward, they brushed off the dust of their triumph, and she beamed with contentment, realizing that she was now the first woman in the female army of the apocalypse. Shortly after, Xiaoli took a seat on the chair. He also mentioned how the girls from the Black Lotus gang had tried to seduce him, but he saw through their ploy. He believed himself to be a true man, scoffing at the idea of falling for such cheap traps. Pointing his finger at himself earnestly, he emphasized that a true friend should always remember that there is no woman in this world who can deceive him. However, before he could finish his statement, the apartment door swung open. Suddenly, a person with river-like characteristics appeared, causing the man to throw his head back on the sofa in surprise. He glanced in the direction from which the person had come, letting out a loud scream as blood began to flow from his nose in all directions. At that moment, a girl with bandaged breasts and only wearing panties emerged from behind the door. She gently stroked her curls and asked her brother if he had returned, while the man's nose continued to bleed. As he gazed upon the beauty before him, he lowered his gaze and opened his eyes. To his surprise, there was a man observing him. The girl quickly shielded herself, screaming in alarm. Suddenly, a clear and loud voice resonated throughout the apartment. The misunderstanding was quickly resolved, leaving only a lingering tension. Glancing at the second blonde, Xiaoli discreetly covered her sister's body and guided them back to the corridor. Just before closing the door, he warned that if he dared to peek, the girl would retaliate. With a resounding slam, the door shut, leaving the hero alone with his thoughts. As he pondered upon the situation, a frown formed on his face, questioning why he had mocked the girl by entering and why he couldn't help but notice her. However, something else caught his attention, causing his eyes to widen in surprise and prompting him to question what it could be. Meanwhile, his attention was fixated on a ring or bracelet that resided behind the glass of the cupboard. Approaching it, he grasped it in his hands, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. As he looked beneath it, he discovered that the previous owner of the house had been wealthy, but in the chaos of the apocalypse, had hastily abandoned all their valuables. If only he could claim this treasure for himself. However, to his surprise, the bracelet suddenly began to emit a bright yellow glow. Gradually, it dissolved into thin air, leaving him bewildered by the unexpected turn of events. The system window then notified him that the bracelet had been absorbed by the system, instantly replaced by a small replica. A goddess materialized and informed him that personal items could be exchanged for 10,000 coins, regardless of their composition, as long as they were made of gold. A single touch was all it took to replenish his balance. This revelation brought an immediate sense of satisfaction to the hero, causing him to almost leap out of his chair with joyous laughter. He whispered to himself that he was incredibly fortunate, realizing that if he continued to search for more gold, he would soon be able to return to his own world. After a short while, the man began to wander aimlessly around the room, calling out for gold like a child and asking where it was hiding. Simultaneously, he searched for it on the sofa, in the cupboard, and even under the cupboard with the help of his magical eye. Just as he was engrossed in this activity, the door finally opened and an old acquaintance appeared, pulling his sister along with him. He turned to Lanjanu and questioned why he was there, causing Lanjanu to become tense. In an instant, Lanjanu tried to force a smile, but his nervousness and stuttering became apparent as the blonde-haired person looked at him and jumped in surprise. Lanjanu desperately insisted that there was nothing wrong, all the while noticing the untidiness of the place. He decided to clean up, and asked in surprise why they would clean in the evening when the night had just begun. Clearing his throat, he explained that it was true because of him. Without wasting any time, he put on a brave face and handed them a tray with a can of canned food, declaring himself a real man, Hao Lanren, and promising that they would live happily with him. The man himself guaranteed it. Xiaoli was shocked by what had transpired, but she quietly expressed her boredom with his antics through her gaze. Meanwhile, his sister shyly hid behind him, blushing and staring at the strangers as they all sat together at the table. Finally, she greeted Lanjanu and introduced herself as Ye Xiaomei, Xiaoli's twin sister. Lanjanu smiled gently, fixing her curls and apologizing for the commotion, explaining that they rarely had guests. However, before he could finish, Hal's laughter interrupted him, and nervously stroking the back of his head, he reassured Lanjanu that it was all right. The older person frowned and referred to Lanjanu as his girlfriend, questioning why he was apologizing when it was usually the other way around. He expressed his astonishment and clarified that he had only mentioned sharing food with her. Furthermore, he emphasized that he was now their sole important guest. Silka Li then pouted and furrowed her brow as she contemplated her unfortunate creation once more. A brief silence ensued until Xiaoli snorted, turned around, and declared her forgiveness. The others, on the other hand, simply apologized again with sweet smiles. This duo resembled a devil and an angel, with contrasting personalities. Despite this, it was evident from the hero's expression that he held genuine affection for her. However, Xiaoli abruptly interrupted the conversation to confirm if he had correctly remembered her name, prompting him to recount how they had encountered his sister. The mention of meeting in the shower was cut short as two hands swiftly reached out to pinch his cheeks, preventing him from divulging any further details. His attempts to speak were muffled as he was reminded of the encounter with the Black Lotus gang, leaving his face flushed with embarrassment. The blonde eventually released him and summarized their meeting, leaving the room filled with tension and a hint of amusement. Meanwhile, he made a conscious effort to reflect on himself. It was impossible for his younger brother to know the truth, that this pervert was secretly watching him while he showered. However, it appears that another girl is beginning to expose their deceit. She claims that he truly does take showers, which implies something. It's the scene where the swordsman lifts the injured hero off the ground, holding her shoulder and smiling sweetly. Awkwardly smiling, he immediately denies everything. Nevertheless, it seems that he is indeed the last one left. It seemed as though her angelic aura had become more assertive. While he himself continued to smile faintly, he agreed with her. He added that if he had known it would offend his little sister, he would have done it differently instead of leaving it as it is. He immediately tensed up, attempting to smile awkwardly, and thought to himself that Izayama resembled a gentle angel. However, it turns out it's not that simple. He discovered the truth. When one of them returned to the sofa, the other began coughing violently. For some reason, she covered her mouth with her hand, while the second person immediately reached out and asked if she was feeling unwell. The hero watched this scene with tension, his brow slightly furrowed. As he continued to sway, he pondered the necessity of bandages for his pale-skinned body, coughing and chest pain. He wondered if he was still sick, or if he was completely healed. Naturally, his magical eyes were drawn to her breasts, before he realized that he had been deeply infected by the apocalyptic world. There were already bacteria and viruses so rampant that a single scratch could be fatal. He frowned and continued to gaze at her, calling out to Xiao Mei and inquiring about her injuries. Ye Xiaoli secretly turned to him and clenched her teeth, clearly displeased with such a question. He tightly clenched his fists and shouted in frustration, blaming the notorious woman from the Black Lotus gang for all their troubles. Just a few weeks ago, he and his sister were desperately searching for food in the cold storage of a warehouse. Standing side by side near a locked door, they exchanged typical signs and quietly entered, beginning to pack a backpack and converse with each other. Luck was on their side as they stumbled upon a plethora of food products. However, their joy was short-lived. Suddenly, the sound of a shoe breaking echoed through the room, followed by the appearance of two other armed girls representing the Black Lilies gang. Outnumbered and outgunned, they realized that the gang had been observing them closely, waiting for the opportune moment to seize their food supplies from other survivors. As they cautiously proceeded forward, a heavy silence fell upon the room. To their surprise, they discovered an abundant supply of food that seemed too good to be true. This discovery ignited a fierce battle between them and the Black Lilies gang, altering the perception of their enemies. Reacting swiftly to the previous threat, he threw his sword, striking one of the gang members with great force, piercing their thigh. Seizing the opportunity, he swiftly retrieved another sword from his fallen opponent and lunged towards another assailant, skillfully stabbing her wrist with the tip of the blade. He was a master of melee combat, having honed his skills from a young age. Meanwhile, Xiao Mei swiftly retrieved her bow and arrow, expertly pulling the string taut and aiming the arrow at their enemy. Ready to unleash her deadly shot at any moment, she was known for her exceptional accuracy as a shooter. From hundreds of meters away, she effortlessly struck both girls in the chest, incapacitating them. Together, they formed an exceptional team, swiftly overpowering their adversaries. The defeated gang members pleaded for mercy, desperately hoping to be spared. However, as one of the girls from the gang inched closer, hissing and baring her teeth, she swiftly withdrew her sword from her thigh, despite the pain and blood that had begun to flow. This sight caused one of the sisters to tense up, anticipating the impending confrontation. Upon witnessing the alarming scene, he quickly realized that Xiao Li was in danger as the gun was pointed at her. Without hesitation, he rushed to shield her, resulting in the blade piercing his chest entirely. The arrow penetrated his chest, causing him to release the bow. Seizing the opportunity, the prostitute attempted a treacherous move to attack him covertly, but it was his sister who intercepted the strike. Shocked, he tightly grasped the blonde's neck, only to discover that his sister had been gravely wounded by the dagger. Fueled by a desire for revenge, their skirmish drew the attention of the zombies lurking nearby, prompting them to flee immediately. Despite evading the zombies, his sister's wound was severe, leading to the onset of an infection. Seeking refuge in a pharmacy, the injured woman lay against the wall, endeavoring to tend to her wound by wrapping it with bandages. Meanwhile, he scoured the shelves in search of medication, specifically penicillin to halt the infection. However, their efforts proved futile, exacerbating his brotherly anguish as each passing day weakened his resolve. Sleep eluded him, and his strength waned. A girl approached him, offering a glimmer of hope by suggesting a way to procure food and possibly find a cure. Reflecting on Xiaoli's resilience, he envisioned honing his marksmanship skills under Sai's tutelage, bolstering his female squad with additional fighters. His determination to rescue Xiao Mei remained unwavering, yet the impending challenge of obtaining the much-needed medicine cast a shadow over his countenance. He believed that he would discover what he required within her, a realm of its own. However, there seemed to be an insufficient amount of gold, and then a smile reappeared on his face. When he informed him that of course he could obtain it, but they needed to find him gold soon. This news uplifted the two girls who gazed up at him. It was merely a friend inquiring if he comprehended everything correctly because gold is worthless trinkets. Why had this world abandoned him? Yet he simply scratched his ears and informed them that he needed gold, and as soon as they found it he would undoubtedly find a remedy. Therefore, they did not need to be troubled by their desires. Let them believe it and gather all the gold. Let them assist him, and naturally he would find medicine for them and bring them sustenance that does not exist in this world. Xiaoli, of course, immediately brightened her eyes, and saliva dribbled from her mouth. Food did not exist in this world, so it did not truly matter what she required. Unless he could find everything except Xiao Mei, who, on the contrary, believed that this person was willing to share, even food, if it meant going against them. He must have attacked him long ago. He did not believe he was evil, and in an apocalyptic world, everyone has their secrets. If he helped them survive, then why should they learn anything else about him? Therefore, both girls happily agreed with him, informing him that they had consented to everything, which meant they were cooperating with the wounded. The woman immediately informed him that she knew there was a casino in the west of the city, the #1 casino in Quanzhou. They typically used gold as a bargaining tool there, so he believed that was where the largest gold reserve currently existed. However, his sister immediately called him, asking if he had truly forgotten that there were mostly zombies there, to which he responded with surprise that this was indeed true. That was indeed the situation, with his eyes ablaze with power and mana. If the location happens to be a zombie nest, that's advantageous. He would simply eliminate all the zombies in the nest, ensuring a swift return home. With a smug smile, he reassured them not to fear, as that was their destination. He himself would handle the undead. Placing his hand on his chest, something materialized instantly from the system, and soon he retrieved and placed all the canned food and apples on the table, declaring that they must now consume it. Everyone would spend the night together resting, and in the morning they would head to the casino. Xiao Mei simply glared at him, falling silent without knowing how to react appropriately. She then thanked the hero with a smile, while the second person nodded in agreement. It was evident that he intended to savor the food in moderation, as his mouth was already watering. As evening approached, Sion tossed and turned in his sleep, blushing and breaking into a sweat. Lying in bed, attempting to drift off to sleep, he eventually stood in another room near the balcony. Gazing ahead, he sadly rested his hand on the windowsill. He pondered the fact that he was unaware of his company's fate. However, it was essential to return and uncover all the details regarding the mysterious Jiru who had attempted to kill him. Xiaoli observed him from a different balcony, believing he was searching for medicine for her sister. Instead, she discovered a group of Black Lotus prostitutes washing her blood to avoid attracting zombies. She felt fortunate that he was present, despite his intrusion into the bathroom while she was unclothed. Despite feeling secure with him, they both became alert when they heard footsteps in the distance, rustling in the grass. Sensing something amiss, the hero immediately utilized his magical eye, focusing on the grass where the sounds originated. Initially, there was nothing visible, but soon, several silhouettes emerged and approached. 3 girls, led by a strong woman, appeared and commanded everyone to halt. As a zombie growled and attempted to break through the bars, the stern woman fired a shot from her gun, striking the zombie. She then instructed everyone to form 2 lines and gestured towards the hero's residence, directing them to move there. They promptly began walking on the grass towards the fence. The hero, in the meantime, spotted a scarecrow in the midst of the crowd he was leading. The entire army of the Black Lotus gang was seeking revenge on him, as he had been observing everything through binoculars. Swiftly, he turned to the side of the room and contacted his sister. Despite having just risen from bed and grabbing his bow upon hearing everything, he instructed her to arm herself before expressing the urgency of their situation. How would they manage to escape from within? Meanwhile, the man simply furrowed his brow and continued to survey the troops, pondering the number of armed individuals within the Black Lotus gang. It was fortunate that he had managed to leave. However, Xiaoli and her injured sister were in grave danger. This was when the hero's expression turned grave. Once a viable plan formed in his mind, he remembered the substantial amount of money he possessed, which could potentially be used to secure their safety. With a determined look, he vanished from the world using the system and the power of his thoughts. Consequently, he found himself in the system space, where a goddess materialized before him. In an instant, his friend flashed a smile and informed him that he needed 10 million coins to upgrade the magic eye as far as he could remember. Did he have enough now? Returning the smile, he informed his friend that his current balance was 31,010,000 coins, which would easily cover the cost of upgrading the magic eye to Battle Eye. The blonde spirit also chimed in, assuring him that everything was fine and urging him to fix everything. Without hesitation, he poked directly into the corresponding window. Suddenly, a blue light and a beam of light shone into his eyes. And then, he was told that his magic eye had been successfully upgraded to Battle Eye. The excitement was overwhelming as the light caught up with his yellow irises, immediately changing their color to blue and causing his pupils to dilate and take on the shape of a cross. The men could only blink in surprise and marvel at the newfound might and mana. Meanwhile, his companion congratulated him and confirmed that the magic eye enhancement was a success. The power of the fighting spirit eye was now ingrained in his memory. Taking inspiration from Dragon Ball, heroes strike poses that reflect their strength and mana. He then exclaimed that the Black Lotus Gang would soon witness the true power of the perfected fighting spirit eye. The goddess, however, looked at him awkwardly, thinking that her master was being foolish and that this had nothing to do with the eye power of the fighting spirit. Clearing her throat, she assured him that the system had his best interests in mind. The master had spent 10 million coins to upgrade the magic eye, leaving a current balance of 21,010,000 coins. The next level of the magic eye, the Scarlet Fire Eye, would require 20 million coins to upgrade. Khan, feeling the urge to continue improving, became instantly angry. "So expensive, huh?" he muttered. The system simply mocked him, knowing that if he became better now, he would never return home. He postponed the issue, expressing his gratitude while mentioning that he would handle the escalation himself to avoid future disappointment. With a touch of magic, he showcased his new lottery skills, revealing a large robot containing a mysterious capsule and a blocked dial. After a brief explanation, he received a reward of 2 million coins, which could be used to obtain skill equipment or weapons. The 7-star antivirus against zombies was a painful reminder, but the poison sword god Ganjian was pleased with the gift. As he agreed to try his luck, 2 million coins were immediately deducted from his account, setting the wheels of the machine in motion. The spinning arrow landed on a scroll of paper, leaving him shocked and disappointed. Frustrated, he pressed the button again, initiating another spin that cost him an additional 2 million coins. Despite his misfortune, he continued to face unexpected challenges, wondering why he was being offered napkins and lube. In disbelief, he realized that luck was not on his side as he discarded the unnecessary items once more. The arrows began spinning again, far away from the items, as the power and mana in front of them ceased. My friend's expression was filled with discontent. Although the pink bikini that appeared in his hands was not bad, he seemed indifferent to it. Furthermore, it had cost him 2 million. However, his face soon brightened up. He started laughing as an idea popped into his head. He tightly twisted the cloth in his hand, feeling a surge of energy and looking in a specific direction. Meanwhile, Xiao Li pounded her fist next to him, calling out loudly to Lanren and instructing him to come out. A gang of black lilies was causing havoc in their house with great strength and enthusiasm. Desperately, he turned to his sister for advice on what to do. Before he could even invite her to move in and inform her that he would handle the situation, he forcefully tapped his foot on the floor and swiftly made his way towards the door. As he picked up speed, he was about to collide with someone using his elbow. However, before he could react, a noise emerged from the door, and it suddenly swung open towards him. The man on the other side appeared clueless as he rushed forward, intending to incapacitate this intruder. Xiaoli collided with the man's chest, unable to stop his fall with his hands. The impact caused a loud crash, and the blond man opened his eyes in surprise to find Xiaoli sitting on top of him. Blushing, Xiaoli quickly tried to get up, but the man seemed pleased with the situation. Confused, Xiaoli wondered why the man was sitting on him and why a big duck appeared behind him singing praises. Shocked, Xiaoli accused the man of being a pervert and hit him, cheeks turning even redder. Xiaomei approached with a backpack, reminding them of the looming threat of the Black Lotus Gang outside. She warned of their numbers and the presence of their leader with a silenced gun. Xiao Li's little brother woke up, ready to seek revenge, but Lanren advised against it, suggesting more effective methods. The group looked at him in curiosity, and Lanren grinned, hinting at a different approach. Before removing her pink bikini from her chest, it screamed about the amazing. His face continued to glow with a smile. Why did that blush immediately imagine himself in a similar picture and ask a friend if he understood everything was just like that? Xiao Li promptly used a regular punch to hit right on the chin while screaming that this damn pervert was going to hell. They would never use this embarrassing rack anyway. She then promptly started using a Spartan grip on him, pinching his neck, which made the man choke and blush again, asking who said they would wear it. She then promptly asked to listen to it. One day, many people had already gathered around the large plantation, which was getting closer and were now almost standing in front of the door. Meanwhile, one of the girls approached the head and called the woman, telling her that they had come Chatsu. She immediately let out her voice, holding the gun in her hand and shouting that the person who killed Hong Ying was here. She was sure that the twins were here too. Lanulian immediately shouted that it was good and told them that they could not escape anywhere today. He and an old friend approached the door, holding guns in their hands, before the brunette pulled the handle and loudly announced that their door was open, and then opened it even wider, causing moonlight to fall inside. They all joined hands and slowly began to advance, still not having lost their weapons. They saw some kind of trace on the wall. That was why the chief immediately clenched his fists and ordered everyone to stand up, saying that he heard something and they were clearly ahead. That was the reason Chu-Chu tightened her grip on her dagger, while the woman adjusted her gun with a satisfied smile. She confirmed that they were correct. They were fully prepared. All their weapons were ready to shoot and use at any moment. Before Lin urged everyone to move forward, he himself leaped out into the corridor with a friend, bracing their legs against the previous wall. Both of them were taken aback by what they saw. They were astonished by the sight in front of them. A girl in ballet flats was hanging something in front of her, her arms spread out like a ballerina or a figure skater. Chu-Chu couldn't believe what she was witnessing. Do zombies dance? How many of them were there? Where were those monsters hiding? In an instant, the zombie turned towards the girl, its bright blue eyes flashing, causing the girl to freeze. She couldn't speak, only tremble as she pointed towards something. There is a stand that can also serve as a striptease pole. The zombie leaped down and placed its hands on the ground. A multitude of male zombies began to emerge behind it. However, there was one key difference. The acquaintance with blue and crimson eyes finally regained the ability to speak. Mutter inquired the leader about the origin of all these zombies. They had all gathered due to the dance of the deceased girl. In an instant, it seemed like even more of them appeared. Gradually, they surrounded the entire group of black lotuses, and one of them lunged towards the others, growling loudly and baring its teeth. The rest continued to fix their gaze on them, burning with intensity, until Lin suddenly extended her hand to shield the others. She yelled that they were in danger and commanded them to flee immediately. Without hesitation, she took action and prepared for the impending chaos before the frenzied gunfire erupted. The moment the other girls dashed toward the exit, abandoning the main one, a girl suddenly burst through the door, drenched in blood. The wound immediately alerted the leader, exclaiming about their dire situation, causing even more tension. His eyes widened in shock. The girl with short hair mentioned that they were also surrounded outside. But before she could finish, the zombies charged towards them. One of the zombies grabbed his arm and bit his shoulder. He screamed in desperation, reaching out for help. However, he fell to the ground immediately, the zombie continuing to bite down hard, while an old acquaintance watched in horror. Suddenly, a hooded blonde appeared behind them, completely shocked. The same zombie confidently approached, mouth wide open, aiming for the neck of one of the girls, causing turquoise drool to be visible. It then sank its sharp teeth into the carotid artery, causing Chu-Chu to jump in fear. Everyone drew closer and widened their eyes. When his clothes and face were stained with bright blood, she immediately covered her mouth with her palms and began crying desperately. She thought to herself that he couldn't die. It was impossible. The girl attempted to move forward, barely able to breathe. He grabbed her legs, trying to keep her in place. With his hands covering his ears completely, he continued screaming in his mind that he didn't want to die. Behind him, the shooting persisted with force. The bullets sounded like approaching zombies. The woman made desperate attempts to survive, frowning and trying to fend off the large crowd, only for the bullets to keep coming. However, they didn't seem to cause any harm, especially to the woman who stood in front defending herself with just her hands. His eyes still gleamed as he stared down the gang. Her wristwatch showed the same time as when the bullet had not moved. Lin opened her eyes wide in surprise, continuing to shoot and talk to himself. He wondered how he managed to protect himself from it all. Suddenly, he joked unclearly, hitting the woman in the face and calling her an idiot. He had previously ordered her to give him the gun, but then he took it himself, shouting curses at her hysterically, claiming he was protecting them from all the zombies. He hadn't actually killed anyone directly in his line of sight. Annoyed, he shouted, questioning his own sanity. He was talking about protecting himself and his sister. They refused to intervene. He is a complete imbecile for allowing him to perish. Meanwhile, they continued to argue, insisting that one of them must release their grip on each other's hands. Suddenly, a scantily clad girl approached them, capturing their attention. With a sinister grin, she possessed an overwhelming power and aura. However, it turned out that her intentions were not as malevolent as initially perceived. She simply burst into laughter upon observing them. In that moment, their true nature was revealed, which was utterly repulsive. Today, they will face their demise together in hell. The man altered his instructions regarding the petrol canister, realizing that it was time to do so. Obtaining it was proving to be quite challenging. Choo-Choo let out a loud scream and forcefully struck her head against a nearby wall, causing her to collapse lifelessly onto the ground. The girl, startled, grabbed her gun and opened her eyes in astonishment. Just then, she noticed a machine hurtling towards her, with the tube striking against her heel. The brunette pleaded with the zombies not to proceed as she approached them, tears and sweat streaming down her face. However, Lanrin merely smirked and chuckled louder. Recently, an acquaintance began shooting with such intensity that he couldn't comprehend how he managed to do it correctly. He screamed at the top of his lungs, desperately attempting to halt the shooting and persuade him not to do it. As the bullets began to strike the man, he tried to shield himself by closing his hand, causing the bullets to ricochet and strike the fuel canister directly. "Oh, damn!" the girl screamed loudly, her voice echoing until her face turned pale, illuminated by the intense light of the ensuing explosion. This is what happens when you discard those close to you. Not only were they torn apart by the blast wave and flames, but the man bid them farewell with a wide smile, as he typically does. He continued to flee from the explosion site alongside his companions, who were carrying Xiao Mei on their backs. Meanwhile, Zhao Li dashed ahead before a notification popped up from the system goddess, congratulating the owner on receiving 6 million coins. A smile immediately spread across his face as he pondered the idea of controlling zombies and eliminating adversaries to earn gold pieces effortlessly. Upon hearing the man's inappropriate comment, he swiftly rebuked him and urged him to change his mindset. Perplexed by his own thoughts, he gazed at her in astonishment. Uncertain of what to say, he expressed his dissatisfaction, warning that she would take matters into her own hands if he didn't cease his actions. The injured woman firmly grasped her shoulders with vigor and magic to provide better support. With a gentle smile, he advised his sister against using profanity, emphasizing that it was not the appropriate moment. As they strategized on how to fend off the Black Lily Gang's assault, the conversation abruptly halted, leaving an awkward silence in its wake. Encouraged by the man's words, everyone nodded in agreement, acknowledging the wisdom of sisters. Despite his frustration, he couldn't help but feel irritated by her actions. The blonde furrowed her brows in displeasure, contemplating her response to the situation. As he pondered the wastefulness of the situation, Xiao Mei approached the man, questioning the sudden appearance and dance of the female zombie. Tension filled the air as the blonde glared at her, muttering that the situation was actually quite straightforward. Lanrin smiled at her and explained the process of using the awakening acupuncture hand to stop zombies from dancing. He then suggested that she give it a try, causing the twins to blush and turn towards him. Suddenly, a blow flew over his head, followed by the sound of bones breaking and Lanren screaming. Despite the chaos, Lanren stood up with bruises and blood on his face, laughing to himself. He mentioned that no one would believe he could control zombies, especially after his recent encounter with the system goddess. The goddess informed him that his martial soul pupil had been successfully upgraded, displaying the information on the screen. Lanren opened his eyes, realizing he now had the ability to control one zombie at a time, sharing its vision and movements. This newfound skill could prove to be incredibly useful in the future. The girl proceeded to elaborate that the eyes of the fighting spirit are activated once every 2 hours, allowing only one zombie to appear under control. If a zombie was under control, the person could see everything within the zombie's field of vision. Lanren's face lit up with a grin as he inquired about the possibility of this being a martial spirit eye skill. He expressed disbelief at the idea of gaining such powerful abilities as controlling zombies and being able to see everything in front of his eyes. He believed that mastering this skill would be sufficient to reap numerous benefits from it. Not far from the plantation, in a nearby neighborhood, a man sat on a roof, carefully and silently observing the house in front of him with strength and poise. A smile crept onto his face as he realized that this was the person he had been seeking. Upon achieving his immediate goal, he used his newfound abilities to transform his students into different forms. He then encountered a zombie girl nearby, who exuded strength and mana. As he sharply turned his head to look at her, their gazes met in a blend of light and Blu-ray, causing their DNA to mix, and her iris to change to a lighter, bluer hue. Before he could fully comprehend the situation, their appearance shifted in another direction, prompting him to swiftly turn around. He then directed his attention to another zombie, assuming a seductive pose that captivated onlookers and drew their focus towards him. In the fifth instance, she intentionally sways her hips to capture the attention of the men. Initially, they were taken aback, surprised and confused. However, as they caught on, a sense of camaraderie emerged among them. One man was completely captivated, while the others squinted and smirked, and a man with a mustache blushed. Clasping his hands together, he began to gesture animatedly, attracting a small crowd of onlookers who admired the girl with affection. They followed her quietly, chuckling awkwardly. Despite the commotion, the man couldn't help but laugh at himself, boasting about his extraordinary plan. However, he was taken aback when he noticed the girls watching him in confusion. He scowled and clenched his fists before calling his sister over to witness the scene. The man had a sinister laugh, hinting at something lewd. The smile quickly vanished from his face as the girls stared at him, unsure of how to respond. He chuckled nervously, asking why she had taken it. He was pleased with how they had handled the situation with the Black Lotus gang, even though he sarcastically agreed. He pressed his hand to his mouth awkwardly, looking a bit forlorn, and remarked that they had had enough excitement for one day and should regroup. All the undead creatures in the vicinity had previously indicated their desire to resume their journey promptly while they were on the move. It was mentioned that the casino was not too far away, but they wouldn't reach it by foot until daybreak. Xiaoli promptly agreed with her sister's suggestion to keep moving forward, emphasizing the need to hurry. Some of the zombies overheard their conversation, including an explosive zombie who had been rummaging through a dumpster nearby. Just before he could peek out from his hiding spot to observe the situation, a knife swiftly approached him from behind. With a quick motion of his hand, the zombies' heads were immediately severed from their bodies. Lanren utilizes his Blu-ray power, taking control of a zombie to eliminate others of its kind. As the zombie's head falls to the ground, it dissolves into gold coins with the assistance of the system. A bright grin immediately appears on the face of the person or zombie who steps forward as 1 million coins are added to their balance. Underneath the hat, Lanren's blue eyes reveal his satisfaction. He realizes that by killing zombies alongside other deceased individuals, he can still earn money with minimal effort. This method proves fruitful as 3 million coins are subsequently added to his balance. The hero chuckles to himself, confident in his ability to eliminate 3 individuals at once. His powers are truly extraordinary. In this manner they progress, eliminating 3 zombies in one go while leaving everyone else behind. They approach the casino with the company of deceased individuals. Meanwhile, the sun begins to rise, casting its light higher and higher over the city's various buildings. The casino nearby immediately illuminates, as if anything is possible within its walls. Hordes of growling zombies swarm in with great force, their mana levels varying. Above, the hero and two girls silently observe the scene. The man furrows his brow and suggests that if they manage to surpass this entire horde of zombies, there must be a casino awaiting them behind that door. Xiaoli agrees, gripping the hilt of her sword in confirmation. He accurately identified the source of the commotion, inquiring about the sudden influx of people, and confidently declared his intention to divert their attention towards the gate. However, his sister intervened, grasping his hand and urging him to cease his actions, prompting him to widen his eyes in astonishment and glance at Sion. Upon requesting permission, he was granted the freedom to wield his powerful bow and aim his arrow straight ahead. Yet upon surveying the surroundings, he noticed the overwhelming number of zombies near the gate. After locating the barrel adjacent to them, he adjusted its position slightly, realizing its significance. The barrel situated on the far right emitted a warning signal. With a determined expression, he pulled the bowstring taut, focusing intently on his target. Releasing the arrow, it swiftly struck the zombie near the barrel, narrowly missing his shoulder. The projectile continued its trajectory, descending towards the barrel and triggering a violent explosion upon impact. The resulting sparks ignited fires and subsequent explosions, catching the attention of the undead figure who turned towards the source of the chaos. In an instant, massive explosions and shockwaves reverberated throughout the surroundings. The rest of the zombie horde immediately took notice, abruptly turning around and growling loudly. Intrigued by the commotion, everyone rushed forward to investigate. Sayamai, from his vantage point, observed the horde running towards the explosion, and within seconds, the door was completely obliterated. The girl cheerfully declared that everything was fine now, as there was no one left at the gate. Lanrin turned to Sayamai with a joyful smile and gave him a thumbs up. He called out to the blonde and complimented her on a beautiful shot, causing her to blush. Meanwhile, Xiaoli proudly embraced his shoulders and proclaimed that he was still in bad shape. He then boasted that he could hit any target from 1,000 meters away. However, he quickly denied it out of embarrassment. One day, the man looked up at the light and golden playing cube atop the building. Yang shielded her eyes with her palms and asked the girls if this was truly a casino. She added that it seemed like a place filled with gold as she spotted the golden dice from above. They had arrived at an abandoned bus stop, where the girls marveled at how cool the man was. The second girl mentioned that he had been here before the apocalypse. The man himself smiled with satisfaction, confident that there was a wealth of gold within. Before instructing them to retrieve all the gold hidden inside, something suddenly struck the metal jar, prompting the man to open his eyes in surprise. He immediately tensed up and warned his companions of impending danger, urging them to hide for a while longer. The girls quickly followed his orders and sought shelter behind the bus. Meanwhile, Lanrin observed the unfolding events. As the situation escalated and the smoke billowed, a massive hand emerged from the haze, causing the man to tremble in fear. The impact was so intense that it shook him to the core. Peering into the mirror, he was shocked to see the same figure looming behind him. Gradually, the smoke dissipated, revealing a colossal giant who seized the bus with his enormous hands. The enormity of the situation became apparent as a colossal baby zombie emerged. Its hand extended suddenly, while it knelt down and let out a piercing scream. Its fists clenched tightly as its bright red eyes flickered with an eerie glow. As it approached, a large black object emerged, the umbilical cord. The scream shattered nearby windows, causing shards to scatter everywhere. The hero and the girls held onto each other tightly, bracing themselves against the immense force. Despite its actual size, the baby's attack radius was surprisingly vast. Xiaoli, filled with fear, huddled in their small shelter. Peering through the broken window, she whispered, questioning whether this creature was truly the embodiment of evil. She wondered how to communicate with it and ascertain its understanding. The survivor's explanation confirmed her worst fears. This was a mutated zombie with devastating power, equivalent to hundreds of regular zombies. Lanren furrowed his brow as he observed Xiaoli, leaning against the bus frame and slowly crouching down, his palms reaching out for a nearby rock. He pondered the true strength of these demons as he examined the rock and eventually lowered himself to the ground. He inspected the area beneath the public transportation vehicle before directing his attention towards a sign. Taking aim, he fired at it with a resounding click, causing the rock to dislodge and fall. The projectile flew straight towards the stop sign, creating a loud noise upon impact. The zombie immediately caught their attention with its intense red gaze, turning towards them and reaching out. It displayed a childlike curiosity, crawling over and poking its finger at the mark, as if examining it. A mischievous and inquisitive expression adorned its face. Meanwhile, the demon observed the scene with interest, gesturing and attempting to touch the sign. The same zombie, controlled by the hero, wielded a spear and stood atop a blue lantern. Its eyes gleamed, and a slight smirk formed on its lips. Before the tip of the spear was even fully drawn, it pierced through the plastic, exerting force with a foot from an angle. The equipment was completely destroyed, its sharp edge pointing towards the right. It was poised to strike the back of the demon's head, potentially delivering a fatal blow. However, the baby zombie remained undistracted. Suddenly, a hand reached out from the side, diverting its attention. The younger undead man obediently went straight into the palm of the hand, its body tightly squeezed by the fingers, crushing everything within. As the power of control waned, Lanren let out a final sigh. The demon brought his palm closer to his face, offering the dead man for examination. With its red eyes wide open, the zombie revealed 3 rows of teeth, eagerly biting the demon's hand as they proceeded along their path. Eventually, it settled back into place, emitting a throwing sound and cursing through clenched teeth. The distraction caused by these hands was momentary, as the demon's jaw slightly opened. While the man was present, Lanren exerted even more effort in devising a strategy to overcome the formidable baby zombie demon. He acknowledged the demon's strength and capacity for devastation, yet he also recognized his own intelligence and agility. Lanren felt a sense of unease at the demon's level of ferocity. However, he remained confident that his magical eye would not fail him and would ultimately prevail. Suddenly, the system goddess materialized with a smile, confirming that Lanren had successfully hit the mark. "Bingo!" he exclaimed. Only the man could perceive the presence of the system goddess, leaving him astonished as she appeared before him in all her grandeur and stature. She gestured towards him, shaking her head in disbelief. Meanwhile, Xiaoli looked at him with surprise. However, the blue-haired system goddess quickly smiled at him and reassured him not to worry. They hadn't seen anything. He approached and examined the new enemy. The enemy informed him that the evil ghost had consumed 10,000 zombies, evolving into a high-level zombie. The enemy added that the owner couldn't control it. But the goddess immediately smiled and pointed in her direction, telling him that if he killed her, he would receive a significant bonus. A system window appeared, notifying him of the temporary task to destroy high-level zombie demons. The bonus was 100 million coins, along with special prizes. The remaining time was 1:59, 55. The hero's face immediately changed to one of satisfaction. He had never seen such a large number of rewards before, some of which were completely unknown to him. However, he was abruptly interrupted when someone's hand poked his shoulder, causing him to open his eyes in shock. He quickly turned his head towards the source of the disturbance, noticing a frightened Haonime, who called for the Hao brothers and instructed them to surround him and go for gold. His sister frowned disapprovingly as he stood there, clearly unhappy and bored with his appearance. However, the hero managed to force a small smile and pointed at himself, indicating that he had a solution. With a confident nod, he assured them that they would find the gold they were seeking, as long as he could defeat the demon. The girls looked at him in surprise and expressed their concern about the demon's strength. They wondered how they would be able to handle it. The hero turned to them, spreading his arms wide, and explained that if they pursued him for the gold, the demon would be distracted, and they could defeat it. Not only would they eliminate a dangerous threat, but they would also gain a substantial amount of gold as a reward. That was their plan. Lanren immediately formulated a strategy in his mind, causing his expression to change. He confidently assured them that they had nothing to fear because he had a plan. Meanwhile, the blonde girl watched him in astonishment, her mouth agape. As the hero swiftly removed his belongings, he created a cloud of dust around him using his strength and mana. In a commanding voice, he instructed them to follow him. Their first priority was to find a safe place to rest, where they could hide from the devil and other enemies. They made their way directly to the casino, successfully avoiding any consequences or encounters with the zombie horde. Finally, they reached the 5th floor of the casino, where they discovered a secure toilet. It was far away from the mobs and provided a sense of safety. They paused there, with the hero guarding the entrance. The blonde gave the order for them to wait in that spot. He surveyed the entrance in front of him and announced that he would investigate. "Are there any deceased individuals present?" The protagonist promptly utilized his magical abilities, but only one of his eyes narrowed and his eyebrows furrowed. He extended his hand towards the door handle, pulled it, and revealed a room with a flowing river inside. He thoroughly inspected everything within. Behind the curtain, there stood a figure wearing a hat, which immediately captured the man's attention. He vocalized his thoughts aloud and proceeded to advance forward. He alerted others that someone was present. As soon as the man entered with the figure, he noticed an inexplicable foam footprint or gray slime beneath him, which he unintentionally stepped on. He grimaced in disgust and wiped it off. He couldn't comprehend what it was. He looked down to avoid slipping on the substance and suddenly began to fall, sliding forward uncontrollably without the ability to move his limbs. Why was it so slippery? Due to this, he was forced to slide several meters until he collided with the bed, his face landing on the edge. He winced in pain and berated himself for his foolishness. Furthermore, the entire floor was covered in wax. However, when he opened his eyes, he was taken aback. "Please wait a moment. What is happening?" The girls immediately become absorbed in their own thoughts when they see what he is holding in his hands. Xiao Li quickly grabs the handle of her gun. As they call out to their brother, Lanren anxiously looks ahead. Suddenly, a small shock freezes both of them in place. They are clearly stunned by what they have witnessed. In the vicinity, there is a chair with various equipment that may raise numerous questions and concerns. There are also accessories such as clothes and other items. Meanwhile, the hero continues to persist with a smile that appears somewhat awkward. He sticks out his tongue with such force and power that it makes his posture even more peculiar. Just like him, the girl's expression immediately changes. However, he doesn't look at her with disappointment, but rather with complete shock. Even they fall silent, unsure of what to say. Perhaps no words are necessary in this situation. It also becomes apparent that when they step closer, how Lanren gripped the unique doll's chest tightly while lying on the bed. The blonde's expression remained devoid of any emotion as a loud noise echoed through the Yamate suites. The two girls sat on the bed, while the man with the large handcuffs stood by the window, breathing heavily. The doll lay on the floor, crying and handcuffed. Behind a curtain, there was only a hat hanging on a hanger, but he mistakenly believed there were zombies lurking. However, reality proved otherwise. The blonde let out a dissatisfied snort and questioned why he had chosen this room for perverts. He turned to them with a smile, explaining that it was purely coincidental and he was simply seeking a place to rest. Canned goods and apples were visible, and he assured them that he meant no harm. Xiao Li's mood shifted immediately, as did her sister's upon seeing her food. In the meantime, something began to occur. It became evident in the hands of the protagonist of the system itself. Prior to approaching the door, he gestured with his other hand and informed them that he needed to prepare for the battle against the demons. The sisters observed him, and one of them, who was munching on an apple, immediately let out a scream. She expressed her intention to accompany him, but then halted. After a moment, she shook her head and replied that it was unnecessary. He turned to them, smiling gently, and instructed him to stay and protect her sister. He would take it upon himself to handle the rest. The latter even rose from his seat and waved his hand, cautioning his brother to be careful. Meanwhile, Xiao Li simply shouted that. Then he would consume the apple, and within a second, the door would slam shut. The man vanished completely from sight. Subsequently, he silently adhered to the door of that room. He slightly clenched his fists and then smiled. So, let us commence with the planning first. You must locate the safe. It is not a complicated task, as the man proceeded towards the elevator or continued contemplating his new plan near the grand door. However, to confront the demon, he required more money. This is where Hao paused near the golden door and extended his hand to push it open. Before entering, he affirmed to himself that it was a perfect fit. Beneath them, zombies stood with great strength and determination, persistently playing slot machines. The hero rested his hands on the railing, alternating between smiles and frowns, while letting out a loud scream. The sight before him was astonishing. Suddenly his fists pressed against the wall as he quickly surveyed the situation. Opening his eyes wide, he was overcome with shock. Zombies emerged behind him, ready to break down the door and attack the living. However, the hero remained unfazed, his face devoid of fear. Instead, he looked at the zombie with admiration and excitement, smiling and screaming in awe. It was clear that he possessed bravery and strength, making him the perfect match for the undead. The man stood there, mouth agape, as the zombie with red eyes lunged towards him, aiming to strike him in the face. Meanwhile, Lanren appeared calm and used his Hitomi skill to alter his pupils. The zombie froze in place, just inches away from the man's face, as if time had stopped. The man continued to smile while the zombie tilted its head in confusion, trying to comprehend what had just occurred. Its eyes widened in astonishment as its pupils transformed into the same blue hue as the man's.
His face twisted in pain, veins bulged as suppressed energy surged violently. The struggling man collapsed onto the bed, surrounded by faint light. He opened his eyes with difficulty, gaze empty, expression drained. Suddenly, his body snapped violently, room shaking as explosive noises erupted. When silence returned, two women stood calmly watching him. Realizing his mistake, Hao Lanren sighed heavily, embarrassed that the supposed zombie was merely hangers and hats. The woman crossed her arms, staring at Hao Lanren suspiciously, questioning his choice of such a room. Hao Lanren explained awkwardly, insisting he only entered accidentally, seeking rest to recover strength rather than indulgence. Meanwhile, another woman discovered neatly packed food, joyfully pulling snacks from boxes, her excitement lighting the atmosphere. Hao Lanren turned serious, declaring the urgent need for preparations, as a dangerous demonic presence drew nearer. One woman eagerly asked to accompany Hao Lanren, balancing food casually, her eyes showing determination and concern. Hao Lanren immediately declined, firmly shaking his head, unwilling to expose her to the dangerous outside environment. He smiled calmly, assuring them he could handle everything, instructing her to remain and protect Xiaomei inside. Another woman, watching closely, expressed her worry, reminding Hao Lanren to remain cautious during his risky mission. Hao Lanren pushed the door open, hinges creaking loudly. He stood silently before the door, gathering resolve, his eyes reflecting determination for upcoming trials. A faint smile formed as Hao Lanren whispered confidently to himself, signaling the true beginning of his plan. He walked steadily through the dim hallway, reminding himself the vault's location would not be difficult. Hao Lanren reasoned carefully, knowing defeating the demon required funds and greater strength before a direct confrontations. Stopping before another doorway, Hao Lanren extended his hand firmly. Hao Lanren stepped inside cautiously, eyes sharp as countless zombies with glowing eyes emerged from darkness. A confident smirk spread across Hao Lanren's face, recognizing the perfect opportunity to hone strength through battle. He lunged forward instantly, delivering a devastating strike. The corridor thundered with repeated blasts, shattered bodies scattering. Surrounded on all sides, Hao Lanren's determination blazed, certain this relentless combat would forge unmatched power. A towering zombie roared ferociously, glowing eyes burning red, eyes shimmering as energy surged through his vision. The zombie swung a massive hand downward, calmly smiling. Hao Lanren commanded the attack to halt. Confused, the zombie trembled, glowing eyes flickering. The zombie's pupil shifted unnaturally. A towering monster emerged from the shadows, its massive figure blocking the path with deadly intent. The beast charged forward, smashing through walls as explosions erupted around him, scattering enemies amidst falling debris. Bodies collapsed under the overwhelming force. Blue numbers appeared, rewarding the chaos with endless streams of energy. Two monstrous workers rose from the destruction, tirelessly fighting while their master calmly planned his next move. With bloody confidence, he smiled, declaring his control as the basement revealed the vault's hidden entrance. Hao Lanren panted heavily, sweat dripping down his face as exhaustion pressed against his determined spirit. He searched every nearby building without success, frustration growing as his mission yielded nothing but empty rooms. Reaching the main building's last floor, he resolved to destroy everything if the hidden vault remained missing. Noticing the luxurious decorations, Hao Lanren questioned if the room belonged to the leader's private quarters. His eyes widened with excitement, convinced the glittering room concealed the treasure he had been seeking. Hao Lanren examined the portrait, noticing the affectionate couple, suspecting it concealed something important inside. His sharp eyes caught a hidden mechanism shaped like an organ, sparking curiosity about its true function. Cautiously, Hao Lanren pressed the concealed button, uncertain if the mechanism would activate without proper electricity. A low hum echoed as the hidden door opened. Excitement filled his face when he realized a backup power system maintained the vault's secret entrance. Hao Lanren spotted the vault ahead, sensing unimaginable riches within, but danger surrounded the secured path. The alarm system activated, filling the corridor with red laser beams, guarding the treasure behind unbreakable defenses. Determined, Hao Lanren's eyes narrowed, refusing to be stopped by sophisticated traps or artificial protective barriers. He dropped low, crawling beneath glowing beams, his movements precise as he advanced carefully through deadly patterns. With swift momentum, Hao Lanren twisted his body mid-air, flying over lasers, narrowly avoiding the snapping trap. Hao Lanren finally reached the vault door, excitement rising as he prepared to uncover its contents. His golden eyes sharpened with focus. Inside, the vault appeared completely empty, shocking Hao Lanren, who expected piles of treasure awaiting discovery. All he found was a single envelope, leaving him furious after climbing 52 exhausting floors. Determined, Hao Lanren clenched his fist, eager to reveal why a letter was hidden so secretly. Hao Lanren smashed open the vault's final barrier. He retrieved the mysterious envelope from the chest. Confused, Hao Lanren studied the plain envelope, wondering what message could demand such extreme protective measures. The letter's title hinted at hidden indulgences, shocking him as excitement mixed with utter disbelief simultaneously. Suddenly, the boss appeared behind him, enraged, catching Hao Lanren in an awkward and compromising situation. Hao Lanren frowned at the envelope's contents, disappointed it contained nothing more than embarrassing photos. Suddenly, a holographic figure appeared, surprising him as a system voice echoed with an urgent prompt. The system reported that zombies under his control were eliminated, yet profits had already been generated. Hao Lanren's eyes lit up with satisfaction, discovering his gold balance now exceeded 50 million coins. The system advised upgrading for greater strength, officially welcoming Hao Lanren as its chosen host. Energy surged upward, a powerful stream engulfing him as the system began rewriting his physical capabilities completely. Confidence grew within him. He realized the new power granted was undeniably superior to everything before, its symbol glowing fiercely, signifying mastery over enhanced ocular abilities. The system confirmed a successful upgrade, further rewarding him with Falcon's Eye to command multiple zombies. Thrilled by the breakthrough, Hao Lanren clenched his fists, eager to test his advanced skills immediately. Curious, Hao Lanren asked the system about Falcon's pupil, eager to understand his newly obtained ability. The system calmly advised him to study the technique independently, hinting at hidden depths within its power. It then revealed a new feature: 10 consecutive draws, promising greater rewards compared to a single attempt. Hao Lanren's eyes gleamed with determination, immediately agreeing to try since higher chances meant rarer treasures. Moments later, the deduction succeeded. Hao Lanren watched closely as strange items emerged from the chest.